Welcome to Chef Leadership Academy. This lecture is about living alone by choice. The trend is growing where people are opting more and more to live alone, especially in aging, advanced, affluent economies. I think this demographic trend is going to have as great an impact on society, its future economic structure, its future political structure, its future definitely family structure, as aging has, or working women households has, or ethnic diversity has. So let's look at some numbers. Nearly 30% of all adults in the US are now living alone. Think about that. This number will grow to nearly 40% by 2030, which is not that far, just about 15 years from now. The numbers will be even greater in France and other northern European countries. In fact, France, it is estimated, would be about 50% of the people, French population, living alone by 2030. Living alone by choice is therefore a global trend and will have significant implications, as I mentioned, for our future. Living alone is a direct result of later first-time marriage, which used to be 18 for many, many years, centuries probably. It is now shifting to 28. So 10 years from high school graduation, people basically go away from parents, live alone either for studies or for work or whatever they do. We also have the aging population, as I mentioned, among advanced countries. And of course, the last one, which is a more recent phenomenon, a true desire for personal freedom and autonomy, which means living with someone else is a hassle. My freedom is constrained. I cannot do what I want to do when I want to do it, etc., which we'll talk about as a major consequence of this phenomenon. So what are the societal consequences of living alone? First thing I find is that living alone definitely creates the need for belonging. Belonging was given for granted, like we give for granted, hunger and thirst, etc. It is a sort of a natural, innate need of a human being. But it was always satisfied because we were always together with somebody else. We lived with parents when we were young, we formed our own households, we took care of grandparents, etc., which means basically we never had the need for belonging unsatisfied. So now it is not being satisfied by living alone, and therefore what happens? So it is natural to feel lonely when you live alone, which is why we see pets more and more becoming family members. Not only you have a pet, but you behave as if it's your family member. Think about that. There are instances where a wealthy family, Hemsley I think was the lady's name, who left her whole asset, wealthy, she's a wealthy woman, to her cat. Think about that. That's the society we are moving in. She may be sort of the early pioneer and an outlier and a dot, but what she was as a dot now is a trend. So pets as family members is real. All of us can relate to that, the way we see our friends who are living alone having a pet and their behavior. In fact, advertisers are taking advantage of that. If you watch commercials about pet foods and pet accessories, etc. Growth of membership clubs, just rising, whether it's LA fitness clubs, or yoga classes, or church groups, doesn't make a difference. This belonging, need to belong, you manifest in ways other than the family. And of course now we have significant access to the world in having a belongingness through online dating and online relationships. Second point, this is going to create a fundamental shift in society where kinship is replaced by friendship. In other words, life will revolve around friends, not around family members. You are living alone and your friendship matters to you more in terms of daily activities. Friends are your companions for dining out, eating out, for travel, or even for adventures. What we used to do with family members, remember, we are doing with friends. I think this is the reason why there was a huge popularity of two television programs which revolve around friends, one called Seinfeld, other one was Friends. And they had each one more like a decade ongoing. Every week they would come out with new episodes. They are all both comedy based, situation comedies, but they struck a chord. They become very popular programs because that is the way people are living, or they can relate to them. Whole question is going to arise, who inherits my asset if I live alone? Do I give it to my family members? Do I give it to my church? Do I give it to my cat? Or do I give it some sort of a planned giving? There's a huge amount of wealth accumulated by these people which needs to be successfully or successively planned out to give out properly, which is very fascinating. So I think we need to understand where their wealth is going to go after they pass away, after they're gone. I think societal need to cope with loneliness, especially among the aging population, is going to be so strong that we will need social programs for loneliness. For example, assisted living and nursing homes have lots of people totally lonely. They need help also. They need companionship. And we have all kinds of ad hoc social events or organizations where high school kids or college kids will take the pets over there. You will do senior citizenship get-togethers, just so that, but they are not family members. They are strangers. They are volunteers who basically are taking this as their cause, and family members may visit them only occasionally or out of a necessity. Mind-blowing change taking place in the society. We also think that there will be programs which are community-led events and initiatives to bond people who live alone in the neighborhoods. Government-funded programs for single-person households is pretty much right in the horizon. We have lots of government-funded programs for the poor, government-funded programs for struggling middle class, for the education funds, for example, college loans, 509 or whatever college programs that we decide, giving tax incentives, etc. But this will be primarily targeted for single-person households. Now, the next major consequence of living alone by choice is that the workplace becomes the second home. And by the way, this living alone in the old days used to be by the widow out of necessity, and she did not want to move in with her daughter or son. But today living alone is equally relevant for the older men as it is for the younger men and women, etc. So workplace becomes their second home. And companies are interestingly leveraging it properly. So work provides purpose and mission, something that you are anchored. You need an anchor in society. And workplace fusion is already taking place, as you have seen at companies like Google. Of course, their workers are younger, but they're all single primarily. If you look at the database, it looks like there are more singles than married people. And working from home and shopping from work is here. You blur the boundaries of what is your workplace and what is your work time to what is your home place and your home time. I think this is a key change. Social media and virtual communities. You need to bond with something or somebody, and therefore many of these people will end up to be very active on social media. Whatever social media we can think about, whether it's Twitter on the one hand, or in fact Facebook, or WhatsApp, or whatever the well-known social media platforms are out there. They also will more and more go into virtual communities, Second Life or Farmville kinds of communities, where they're immersing themselves into another world altogether, which gives them a connection with something outside of family. Again, family is not the main bonding or belonging mechanism. And of course, I think in this population, digital addiction is more real. You cannot live without it anymore. So digital addiction is another key consequence in the whole digital revolution, especially in this people who live alone by choice. When you live alone by choice, there is no governance mechanism other than self-governance. There is no spouse or significant other who says, don't do it. There are no children who says, Dad, Mom, don't do it. You have more discretionary time. You can do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do, however you want to do it. That freedom that you have with no lack of external governance or intervention, by definition, will create more impulsive behavior. Impulsive consumption, rather than normal eating hours as family demands, breakfast time, lunch time, dinner time, you can eat anytime, as and when it suits you. Impulsive buying behavior, impulsive consumption, that's clearly what I see. But more likely going to be unpredictable career planning. What do you want to do? I don't know. We think it's a new millennium phenomenon, but I think it's a phenomenon of people living alone. Equally important. They are also struggling about meaning in life. What is the right occupation? Should I stay with the company or not stay with the company? What they are looking for is a meaning and purpose in life in some fashion, which is fascinating. So unpredictable career planning. Last area I want to talk about is escape from reality. Ultimately, if you can't get involved in some other way, one learns how to escape, like virtual communities we talked about, but you can have escape mechanisms from substance abuse on the one hand, such as alcohol or some drugs, for example, to, on the other hand, spirituality. There is a whole range. Some are self-destructive, others are self-enlightening. It's up to you. But there always will be latching on to some form of spiritual approach to coping with meaning of life or escape mechanisms. As I said, searching for the meaning of life is real. This is interesting. Rick Warren had a book called Purpose Driven Life. It sold millions of copies. And when you analyze the readers, you find quite often these are the people who are primarily living alone, searching for meaning in life. Fascinating, again, connection there. I think there will be increasing rate of suicide across age and gender groups. Young people are committing suicide because they don't know who they want to be. They have no anchor. As older people are committing suicide, they see why agonize with their life. So if you are terminally ill, rather than continue to live with all the hardship on you as well as family members, you basically decide, I'm going to take my own life. And many states have passed the laws now. So to me, it is a form of suicide in some fashion, but people will be more engaging into suicide across age and across gender groups. And the data clearly are showing, first time I came to realize about this problem, surprisingly, was in Sweden in the 70s. I was invited at a conference on how to use marketing for social problems. And there was a problem of the pensioners, as they call it, retirees. They're totally isolated, lonely. There's a huge alcohol abuse by them, and quite a few simply commit suicide in the process also. Interesting. So there is this dark side of living alone by choice. What are the conclusions, therefore? There is a growing trend of people living alone by choice, as I mentioned. Today, nearly 30% of all American adults live alone by choice majority, and this will grow to 40% by 2030, especially by choice again. Late first-time marriages and preference for personal freedom and autonomy are key drivers for this trend. Living alone is no longer limited to the widow, as I mentioned. Older men as well as younger people are all opting to live alone by choice. Societal consequences of living alone are enormous. Families are being replaced by friends and neighbors. The shift from kinship to friendship is destined to have an impact on family as an institution. Need for belonging will be provided by neighborhood get-togethers, by membership clubs, yoga classes, and online relationships. There will be a need for social programs to address loneliness, and especially among the elderly. The workplace now becomes the second home, maybe the primary home in some cases. It provides purpose and meaning or an anchor to the human being. Social media and virtual communities will become increasingly popular. Digital addiction is here and real. The dark side of living alone is to escape from reality through substance dependence and suicide. Spirituality is emerging as a better alternative. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture. Thank you very much.